Good day everyone and welcome back to the 2021 nest box season. I left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger the last day with this male bird arriving after the cold snap of weather. But was it Miley? Well, after a little while we see that it in fact was Miley, and what gives it away is the arrival of Biddy in just a few moments. And there she is back after the couple retreat over the cold weather. And what I've been seeing online and indeed in the comments is that some people are experiencing the same thing, that with a cold snap the blue tits do tend to not be as active in the nest building as they once were. Their priorities go to survival in the cold weather as they need to eat a whole lot more to survive. But as I've also said before this, is that they're also doing this because they need to correlate the hatching of their eggs with the emergence of caterpillars. And it is crucial that they try to do this. Now, some years it goes well, and some years not so well. Sometimes birds can get it all wrong, and there can be very little food for the chicks, and that can give a high mortality rate in the chicks, and indeed complete nest fails. So it is, I suppose, wise to curb our expectations every year watching these birds, as there are some good years and there are some bad years. I've seen them all over the years. I've seen the good, the bad and the ugly, unfortunately, but the bad news makes the good news all that more special. So hopefully we have a good year this year and a happy story to tell. So after the 6th and indeed the cold spell, the 7th and the 8th didn't really see that much nest building. It was more housekeeping. Now a little bit of material made its way in, but nothing on the scale that we had been seeing previously. But over the 9th and 10th, we thankfully see a slight increase. It kind of steadily increases as the days go on, and indeed the weather gets a little better, as I'm sure you've all been enjoying the spring weather. It's still a little chilly at night, but it is sunny and it is nice, and that is spurring the birds on. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm really loving the spring feel in the air at the moment. The place is really coming alive, and all the birds and everything else is all in the full spring swing of things. And that's no different for Biddy. We can see here that she has started to bring more material into the box, thankfully, but you can see it's having actually quite an unusual effect. As this is a side view nest box, we can see that it's actually pushing the material up the side of the box. And this makes sense. If while she keeps bringing them in, eventually this moss will level out. The only way I can kind of describe it is if you were to make a level floor, you'd pour wet cement on it until it's level, and that's kind of what she's doing. She's putting down the foundations for the nest cup. And indeed, that's exactly what we see her doing over the next couple of days. She brings in the moss more and more at a time until eventually the moss is level and she's left with a nest cup. And then what she'll start doing is trying to line it with the ever softer material. And we even get our first feather in this video, so look out for that. And indeed, it's not the only thing that Biddy treats us to. She actually starts roosting in the box in the coming days. And that's always a milestone that I look out for, as usually females do this as the nest is starting to near completion. And we can see on the 10th that there is certainly a good headway being made in the nest. The moss is getting more and more compact and being brought up higher in the nest box, and a much better nest cup and a firmer nest cup is being made. And Biddy tends to do the majority of her work in between the early morning till about the afternoon. And I have had different birds in the past not mimic this, but actually have their own favourite times to work. So if you have a blue tit at home, please let me know in the comments in what time do they do most of the work, or when do you see them most. It's always interesting to read and see the difference in the birds. We can see Biddy here finishing up at around 5 to 1. She does arrive in at 20 past 3 for a spot check, but then clears off for the rest of the day. But she came in at 7 o'clock, which threw me off. I could see her arrive in, and I even thought it was a bit early for her to start roosting in the nest. But in a matter of fact, she does. She arrives in at 7 and proceeds to not leave. She actually roosts in the nest box. And birds tend to do this as a nest is nearing completion. And I couldn't see why not. They've made a lovely cozy little nest for themselves. Why not use it when there isn't hungry little mouths to feed for a comfy night's sleep? And it's quite funny, as this nest box never gets roosting during the year, during the winter months. It never gets used as a roosting site, but it nearly always gets used as a nesting site. So there's obviously little parameters that work for some nest boxes on nest sites that work for the birds, and some places that just don't. And we see Biddy here just settling down and just getting comfortable for the night. And after the hard day's work, she certainly deserves it. But Biddy wouldn't be Biddy if she didn't try to get a bit of work done before heading off to sleep, with a little bit of nests and shuffles here and there, and a few twitches, just pushing the nest cup into just the right position while she's there. But by 7:20, she's curled up asleep while the camera goes into nighttime mode. It certainly does look cozy in there. And if you ever wanted to know what a blue tit's morning routine is, it involves a stretch, a little twitch around, a hop up to the hole, just a moment to take in the new day, and then off she goes. But Biddy being Biddy, an hour later she's back at the grind and bringing nesting material into the nest box. And it's quite early, she usually waits a while before actually bringing some new fresh material in. But you can see at 5 to 7 here, she was bringing material in and starting the building process all over again on the new day. And I just left this at normal speed to let you know that blue tits don't in fact move at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And we can see that Biddy, maybe after the first night's sleep in it, realises that this bed or nest cups needs a bit of a foundation, and she spends the next 3 hours bringing in grass and moss and weaving it into the nest cup to make the foundation of it. And she brings in so much stuff that we're actually just starting to lose sight of the ground, which is a good thing, as eggs wouldn't do too well on a hard wooden floor. She needs it nice and soft. And that brings us to our next shot, our first feather. This is another milestone that I always like to look out for during the series and during the season. But it doesn't stop there. But Biddy brings in another fantastic feather and does a lovely little spin and weaves it into the nest. It's really starting to look cozy in there, and this behaviour will continue as the days and weeks go on. The material is going to get ever softer and softer, but there is more grass and moss needed in that nest cup to lay the foundation and make some space in between the wood and where the eggs will be. But we will see the material getting softer and softer and eventually being full of feathers or full of fluff. And that just brings me to a reminder to let everyone know to not put out human hair for the nesting birds. A lot of people do think it's harmless and you'd be forgiven to do so, but putting out hair from a hairbrush, let's say, so the birds can weave it into their nests. But unfortunately, you only have to look at last year's nesting season to see why you shouldn't do that. Our hair is too strong for the birds. If they ever get tangled up in it, they can't get loose, and it can have disastrous consequences, as Biddy knows too well. But that brings us to the end of a very busy few days. But we see Biddy here just before the nighttime camera turn on, getting all fluffed up in her cozy new nest. There's still a little ways to go before it's complete, but the nest is really getting there. It's really not too far off. But that brings us to the end of another video. So thanks as always for watching, guys, and please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.